All right. So, with the wake of what's going on up in New York, where they're talking about, there's crime, starting to pop off more and things of this nature, which has to do a whole lot more with, the massive amounts of immigrant individuals are bringing in the MS-13s, these type of things. People have begun talking about how New York City got rid of the $500 bail statute. And as per usual, you know what I'm saying, the MAGA individuals came out, the boomers, came out and started hollering and hooting and talking about how you're stripping away the power of law enforcement and all these type of things. Well, I'd like to push back against that a little bit because let's be real here. The United States government, well, actually, most local towns and municipalities and counties and states have been passing a lot of legislation and a lot of laws that are completely unnecessary and basically unconstitutional. When you talk about things like civil asset forfeiture, if you don't know what that is, it's where they can, if you're like, say, driving to Ohio to go pick up a car, and you live in, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, or West Virginia, something like that, right? And you're driving to Ohio to pick up a car and you get pulled over and you have $3,000 cash to go buy a car, the police can take your $3,000 and then charge the money with the crime. Not you, not your car, not a family member. It can charge the money with a crime. And then you have to pay for a lawyer to defend your money. And police can use these funds for whatever they want. And they do. They buy things like coffee makers and, arcade games for the station. And this has been something that's been going on for a long time. And the government has been getting wildly out of control. Because rather than deal with the problems behind crime, which, there's a lot to go into it when it really comes down to it. When you have, 1 out of every 3 black fathers goes to jail for child support, maybe we should have a conversation about child support. When you have 51% of all child support owed is owed to a state government to pay back welfare, maybe we should have a conversation about child support and welfare. When you have young men thrown out on their asses because they can't live in a house anymore, because Section 8 says at 18 you're an adult and you don't have the opportunity to stay at home to go to college. Well, maybe we should have a conversation about what we're doing to our young men. Because when you're impoverished, in order to make it out, you're going to need a little extra help. And especially in a world where you're not just competing against other Americans, you're competing against China's and Mexico's and all the other places that comes with it. Because we have a global labor force where not only do they stand here and export jobs, but they bring people into our country to do our jobs. And when at the end of the day, they say, hey, look here, you knocked up this female and you need to stand here and pay this child support. And you go, I'm 18. I barely have a job to start with. I'm just beginning my life. They go, we don't care. Get this money. And we're going to come to your house with a man with a badge and a gun. And we're going to throw you in a cage. You're going to have people get very desperate and do very desperate things. It is what it is. And that's not just the black community. This happens in the white community too. Like in my neck of the woods, at one point, 1/4 of the city's population was in county prison, county jail. Right? And we're going to talk about two types of incarceration today. One's going to be prison. One's going to be jail. Prison is where you do your actual time. Jail is where you get held until you start doing your time and your sentence. A county has a jail. A state has a prison. The feds have a prison. All right? So, just so we, understand where the terms are. But let's talk about bail reform. All right, this is an article from Vox. Bail reform, which could save millions of unconvicted people from jail, explained. Hundreds of thousands of legally innocent people can languish in jails on any given day simply because they can't afford bail. California passed legislation in August to get rid of money bail, joining the wave of states and local jurisdictions that have undertaken some form of bail reform over the past few years. When the new law goes into effect in 2019, people arrested and charged for a crime in California would no longer be asked to post bail as a condition in their release. The trend away from money bail, the payment required for a person to be released from jail as they await court hearings, is a welcome development. The use of money bail is one of the most troubling features of our deeply unequal justice system. Bail amounts vary widely, with the nationwide median around $10,000 for felony, though much higher for serious charges, and less for misdemeanor in some places, such as New York City, typically under $2,000, though much higher in some jurisdictions. But even the lower amounts are more than most people can pay, and many spend time in jail for lack of as little as $500 or even $250. Now, they're not lying. So here's my thing. If it's a crime, right, and it's worth going to prison for, right, legitimately, like it's worth going to prison for, you should be remanded to custody, right, if they have that much evidence against. But the problem is that they usually don't have any evidence against you, right? And they stand here and they just throw massive amounts of charges at you, and then they hit you with the bail thing. Now, a lot of times when they have a lack thereof of evidence when you go to your arraignment hearing, because I've been through these process a few times, right? I've been charged with 10 felonies in my lifetime, right? And quite a few misdemeanors. They'll release you if they don't have any evidence against you, right? Legit, that's usually how it works. But if you have evidence against you, you know what I'm saying? Like if it's like you were caught with a gun in your hand, like, yo, it is what it is. You're going to jail and you're going to stay in jail, right? Because you're a danger to the community. And that's fine. That's not a problem. There are some charges in which you should stand here and immediately, you know what I mean, be remanded to custody. There are just some of them that are that way, right? Like, you know, say like, I know a pedophile who got busted here recently. He gave an 8-year-old gonorrhea, right? And he legitimately got caught driving home drunk with with a gun in his waistline, right? Like, yo, that dude there should immediately go to jail. He should go under the jail. Legit. You know what I'm saying? Right? And this is the problem. It's like, yo, there's two different classes of real crimes here when it comes down to it. Right? And legit, like that dude actually did what he did. You know what I'm saying? Like that dude he actually did what he did. It isn't me like standing here going, oh, you're accusing, yo, he did what he did. You know what I'm saying? So, like, all right. When you're charged with a crime that is of bullshit in nature, right? Say you get charged with shoplifting, or you get charged with like drug possession, or like you get charged selling Lucy's on the corner. You get charged for getting in an argument or getting in a fight. You get charged, you know what I'm saying, with a bullshit domestic violence charge, right? These are crimes that should not have any jail time associated with them, right? If you legitimately didn't do something that caused permanent long-term damage to the community or to other individuals, it shouldn't be a crime that we should be charging you with. The only crimes that you should be charged with inside of our society are crimes that violate other human beings' natural rights when it comes down to it. That's what the whole crime statute's about, is to make sure you're not violating the rights of other people. And as long as you're not violating the rights of other people, i.e., you know, their property, you know, or whatever the case might be, you know, inhibiting their ability to travel, destroying the, you know what I mean, like harming them as a human, as an individual, right? There are no crimes that you should be charged with, you know. And so this is kind of where it really gets down to, is that we have entirely too many laws, and the vast majority of this $500 or even $250 law is a drug nonsense, right? Which is like, you know, somebody gets caught and they're shooting up in a park, right? Or somebody gets caught shoplifting, which, you know, yes, you're violating the corporations, you know what I mean, rights, because you're stealing their property, and that should be a crime, you know. And I'm not sure how to like square that circle inside of my head, because like I know that like it's a crime, but on the same point I go, how much damage are you really doing, right? Legit. Like there's a story on this in this article right here where there was a kid who was 16 and got caught stealing a backpack and did 3 years in Rikers Island behind it. And that's the other half too, is the indefinite detention and bullshit with the fucking Homeland Security nonsense, right? Because of the Iraq War and the terrorist bullshit. Like how much of that, comes into play with this bullshit too, where they go, oh man, we're gonna completely violate your rights altogether, right? Like we don't have to stand here and obey the rules that are set down. We don't have to go through, jurisprudence and like sit here and go, well, you're supposed to be brought to trial in a timely manner. If you're in Rikers Island, you should have a year to gather a case against me. And if you don't, I should be set free. Period. When it really comes down to it. Like, it's the most nonsensical bullshit that I could come up with inside of my head. Right? All right. So let's keep going. Our reliance on bail essentially created a two-tiered justice system in the U.S. Many of nearly 500,000 unconvicted people confined in jails on any given day are there because they can't afford to pay bail. Well, let's be real here. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of individuals who are sitting in jails right now because of child support. You know what I mean? Because they owe money that they can't afford to pay. And you literally just took their job from them because you put them in jail and charged them with a crime. That's nonsense. Right? Like, let's be real here. That's what a lot of this is. As people await court hearings behind bars, sometimes for months or even years, they suffer from inadequate medical care and even dangerous conditions. That's a lie. Well, all right. The dangerous conditions is not a lie, but the inadequate medical care is a lie. Like, you get better medical care in jail than you usually do in the street. I know people that go to jail just to get their teeth fixed. Like, that's part of what it is. Like, I was debating on it myself. I was debating on, going to the county so I can get this wisdom tooth pulled out. And many lose their jobs in housing. They also have a higher chance of being convicted than if they hadn't been assigned bail, as they take plea bargains just to get out of jail. That's another one there too. Legit, I've always had a problem with that system of plea bargains where, they'll fucking hit you with some crazy nonsense. Like just this massive amount of crimes, right? They'll throw like these giant criminal charges at you that'll carry like 20 years. And then they'll settle for like something that does like 6 months. And you'll get time served plus a probationary sentence plus a fine. On some bullshit. They and their families are also targets of the $2 billion per year for-profit bond industry. Oh, let's be real here, all right? This is more of this government creating its own problem thing and then us blaming an industry for popping up and, doing what it needs to do. Like, that's, look, all right? Government creates these problems. The problem is the government. That's the problem. The problem isn't the bond industry. The bond people, they're just doing what they're there to do. They're there to facilitate individuals who, aren't rich by any means. Like, you don't go to a bail bondsman if you're rich. Legit. If you're rich, you just pay the money and you get out. But like, if you're like a middle-class individual, like, you put your house, have your mom put the house on the line, whatever. And they mortgage it out and then you get the money back that you mortgaged out, right? Minus a fee for like, if you show up to court. And that's really what that's about. Legitimately. Like, this is a way of making sure that people show up for court. That's really all this is. There's a rising movement to fight the money bail system. Advocates and legislators across the country are pushing to get rid of the money bail in their states and in local jurisdictions. They argue that the system imposes an enormous and unfair burden on people and their families, especially low-income people of color. Just low-income people, all right? It's not just about people of color, all right? Legit. Like, I know white females who get caught up in nonsense because they can't afford fucking, like, fines and lawyers and costs and shit. I know, straight up, I know 2 females, legit, who got pinched doing dope, right? They were over here banging dope into their arms and shit. And they ended up standing here, getting caught by the cops, and then they were on probation for 6 years. Not because, like, they were on probation for 6 years, like, as a sentence. And they went to jail 4 times each throughout these 6 years for the same crime because they couldn't afford to pay the fine. Nothing more. That's it. Just because these broads didn't work and no dude was, no dude's going to give a dope head money. You know what I mean? Getting rid of money bail and releasing many more people pre-trial is a high impact policy shift that can dramatically improve millions of lives. All right, a brief history. In the colonies, as in England, those who were eligible for pretrial release relied on friends and family personal securities who agreed to pay them on amount if they failed to appear at court. In this system, the vast majority of those who were deemed eligible for release actually were released, at least at first. But in the 1800s, the people had trouble finding personal securities. Court shifted to a use of a secured money bail. The idea behind money bail is to provide a financial incentive for a person who has been accused of a crime but not yet convicted to attend court hearings at a later date. Several forms of money bail are used in today's courts. The most common form is surety bail bond, in which a person pays not the full amount but a fee, often around 10% of the bail amount, to a commercial bail agent. The bail agent agrees to pay the full bail amount if the person fails to appear at a court hearing. The 10% fee is not returned to the person. And bail agents often also require the person and their friends and family to sign over collateral to cover the full bail amount. The United States and the Philippines are only two countries in the world with a legalized for-profit bail bond industry. Another kind of money bail is cash bail, which is money paid to the court and returned, often minus a court fee, once the person returns for all court hearings. But that's kind of the deal, right? Yeah, and that's kind of the situation, right? So like that's really where it's at. As the early 1920s, reformers began to point out the problems of the bail system. Bail agents abused their powers. Judges set money bail that people couldn't afford to pay. By the 1960s, advocates were pointing to studies showing that assigned bail was unnecessary. The vast majority of people would return to court if released without paying money bail. Now, this is a whole different issue, right? And it comes down to how many of these individuals would not show up at court. I would say the vast majority probably wouldn't show up at court. But that's fine, right? Because, like, I don't think they should be going to jail. Like, I don't think any of these individuals should be going to jail. Like, there's no reason, like, to have... And this is the problem. Like, is the world safer or less safe if, you know, the guy who sells ounces to the guy who you pick your weed up off of, you know, if he's in jail? Is it safer or less safe? Does that matter? Right? Like that kid, you know what I mean, who's going to shoplift a piece of candy. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's the world a much worse place if, you know, he doesn't end up getting convicted. So, like, why are these crimes? Why is this an issue? Like, I understand, like, you know, a normalized society, right? I get all that. You know, it's like DUIs and shit. I don't support that nonsense either when it really comes down to it. Right. The Bail Reform Act passed by Congress in 1966 established that a person should be released on their own recognizance or under the least restrictive conditions that could ensure their appearance at the court hearings. And many states passed their own similar statutes. But while those states attempted to curb the issue of money bail, they did not get rid of it, as a judge sometimes still assigned money bails that people could not afford to pay. Well, again, like, this is not a problem for somebody who is, like, you have to arrest some people and just keep them in jail. Legit. Like, there's some people who you should not let out of jail, right? It just is what it is. Like, I don't care about justice or, like, nonsense bullshit, right? There's some people who should stay in jail. Like, it is what it is. But for all the other ones, they shouldn't even be charged with a crime. If you should be released, legit, if you should be released for a crime, why are we charging you with a crime? That's kind of the mentality. Like, why is it a crime in the first place if you can be released and you're not, like, fucking up the community or hurting anybody? Why is it a crime then? Why? If it's not that serious, why are you being arrested for it? Why are we violating your human rights and bringing a man with a gun and a badge into the conversation? Why? If it's not that fucking important. Like, real shit. Like, I don't understand. Like I'm not one of those dudes. Like, I'm not scared of other human beings. You know what I mean? Like, yo, I've been punched in the face before. Being punched in the face is just part of life. In the 1970s, 80s, fears of rising crime led to the Bail Reform Act in 1984. 1970s, 80s. What happened, folks? We've been over this 1,000 times on this channel, right? Yeah, stagflation, recession. You know what I'm saying? The beginning of the petrodollar status. Closing down of all of our mills and factories. Japan dumping cars onto our shores. 1970s and 80s, folks. What happened? All our manufacturing disappeared. What happened? Rise in divorce rates. What happened? Destruction of the family. What happened? Rise of the welfare state. What happened? We aren't addressing the problems. We're addressing the bullshit behind them. The act allowed a judge in a federal court to detain someone either for flight risk, that is, if there was convincing evidence that they would abscond if released, or if they were assessed to be a serious threat to public safety. Many states adopted similar statutes in the 70s and 80s. A few years later, the Supreme Court in the United States versus Somero affirmed that the constitutionality of detaining someone for reasons of public safety, while also making it clear that in our society, liberty is a norm. Detaining someone prior to the trial is carefully limited exception. Nearly 30 years later, pretrial detainment is not a carefully limited exception. Judges routinely assign bail that people can't afford to pay. Between 1990 and 2009, releases in which courts use money for bail in felony cases rose from 37% to 61%. Yeah, and like they have some graphs here, you know what I'm saying? Like, yo, it is what it is. You know what I mean? I hope y'all can see that because I'm not really looking at the thing. All right. Yeah, you can see this. You can see this. Right. And, all right, let's keep going. Studies have shown that even at low amounts, most people cannot quickly post bail. They end up staying in jails for days or weeks and sometimes much longer. For instance, in Philadelphia from 2008 2013, nearly 40% of those with bail set at $500 or less stayed in jail at least 3 days. In these cases, money bail effectively detains people without giving them rights that they would have and underwent a formal detention hearing. There's no jobs for the poor. This is the problem. $500 should not make or break you right now. Legitimately. Should not. Moreover, the way decisions about bail are made raises serious questions about the system. A judge setting bail usually takes mere minutes to issue a decision. There's also evidence that this process is incredibly arbitrary. For example, recent analysis of bail decisions in New York City from 538 shows that the chance of being assigned cash bail varies wildly between 2 and 26% for misdemeanors and 30 to 69% for felonies, depending on which judge happens to be overseeing the court on a given day. In many places, courts follow bail schedules, amounts that are based on the charge without taking into account details of a person's case, their ability to pay, and often without defense counsel being present. And nearly 11 million people are admitted to jails across the country each year, many because of their inability to pay bail. Most people... All right, look, you don't get put in jail for your, like, being... All right, okay. You do get put in jail for being poor. Like, yo... Right? It's not a joke. And yeah, you see like the amount of individuals who are not convicted has doubled, right? Since like 1995. And that is a problem. It absolutely is. Legit. But again, it goes down to more of this nonsense. You know what I'm saying? Beyond the sheer numbers are the personal stories of those who have suffered as a result of the money bail system. One story is that of Caleb Browder, a 16-year-old in New York City who was accused of stealing a backpack in 2010. His family couldn't afford a $3,000 bail set by the judge, and he spent the next 3 years in jail on Rikers Island awaiting trial. Browder refused to plead guilty, and his case was finally dropped by the prosecution, who sent him home. However, after years in jail, much of it in solitary confinement, Browder had trouble readjusting to his old life. He died by suicide in 2015. Yeah, yeah. He was 16. They had to keep him in solitary confinement the whole time because he was in fucking adult jail. They would have fucking raped the shit out of him. Catalyzed by the injustice of money bail, many advocates and leaders across the political spectrum are pushing to end its use. One important strategy for fighting the system is to argue in court that setting unaffordable bail is unconstitutional, a violation of due process and equal protection clauses of the 14th Amendment. Nonprofits, including Civil Rights Corps, Equal Justice Under Law, the ACLU, and the Southern Poverty Law Center, have lodged dozens of lawsuits challenging the practice in many states, including Texas, Alabama, Illinois, and California. These suits have led to some major victories, including a 2017 ruling from a federal judge who ruled the money bail system in Harris County, Texas, was unconstitutional. In a year after hearing her ruling, more than 12,000 people accused of misdemeanor and held on money bail that they couldn't afford were released. The decision is being appealed. The fight against bail is also taking place at a local level with the election of progressive district attorneys. District attorneys have an enormous discretion in the cases they decide they will pursue and the charges they bring, and as whether they ask the judge to set bail in a particular case. Now, look, here's the thing. There's two parts of this. And even if you're like a right-wing individual and like, you think that like this money bail system is good and you hate, You know what I mean? Hoodlums, whatever the case might be. You don't like criminals because you're like, I live my life properly and I make sure my grass is only 2 3/4 inches tall. And we're going to make sure that my driveway is sealed properly and we're going to meet every code in my household. And we're not going to do anything wrong ever because you know what? I'm an American and I love my homeowners association. And I got a white picket fence and a guard outside to make sure that none of these folks get anywhere near me. Right? Even if you're one of them, you should legitimately still be on a level of where you think that this is a bad thing, right? Because it's going to expose the system for what it is and tear down a lot of the garbage laws that will affect you. You know what I'm saying? It's going to tear it. Like this here will help tear down feminism and their bullshit because it exposes the problems that come down with welfare and, you know what I mean, all the programs and all the bullshit that comes down through. Legitimately. This is why you should still support things of this nature. But yo, look, I got food in the oven and I'm hungry. So I want to go eat. So in the meantime, man, I want to holla at y'all. I'm Tom Peace. You know how we do. I'm going to figure out where I'm going to upload this at. I'm not sure yet. Make sure you're checking me out on Anchor, man. I'm over here getting my podcast thing on. You know, link will always be in the description. And, you know, check out my Discord. Or yeah, make sure you join the Discord for, you know, whenever I post something new up. I'll holla at y'all. Peace.